Good day, everyone. This is Shaliza B. Amper, your teacher in English. Welcome to our class once again, and I hope you have redeemed yourselves as you went through the 2 week sem break. So now this will mark the beginning of our third quarter. So fasten your seatbelts as we go through the first lesson in English. So for this week, we have differentiate biases from prejudices. As we go on through the lesson, we should know our goals for the week. First, we have differentiate bias and prejudice through examples. Next is to weigh information to make decisions. And lastly is to appreciate fairness during activities. Alright, you have to hold your horses as we can't go through the lesson without knowing how far you know about our lesson. So here in our slide, we have two items. Both have two statements, and you need to decide whether these statements are for bias or prejudice. You can always pause the video while you are thinking of the answers before proceeding to the next slide. For number 1, the answer is bias, and for number 2, the answer is prejudice. If you got both correctly, you're excellent. But if you got them wrong, it's okay, because as we go through our lesson, you will understand how these two words differ. So let's go. Look at this logo. What comes into your mind when you see it? Yes, it is a segment in a noontime show, Eat Bulaga. So just like what people do in this game, have you caught yourself free-judging people? Let's see how good you are in making decisions. You have to discern whether the next slides refer to prejudice or bias. This article comes from the GMA news page, and this is from the time of 2019 nCoV, known as COVID-19 right now. And look at the last two sentences. Do they refer to prejudice or bias? If your answer is prejudice, you're right. Now let's look at the meaning of this word. Prejudice is an unfavorable opinion or feeling formed beforehand or without knowledge, thought, or logical reason. It simply means to prejudge others. For example, it is sometimes assumed that someone who is physically disabled is also mentally disabled. Are you also guilty with this? Sometimes we tend to assume that when we see PWDs, we also think that they can't do anything else. Looking back at the first example we had for prejudice, people believe that the virus came from China, and so they generalize Chinese people as if everyone has virus. That is being prejudiced. Now let's move on to the next slide. Right, so this slide refers to bias. What does bias mean? It is a tendency to favor one person, group, thing, or point of view over another, often in an unfair way. For example, male teachers give more attention to girls. So have you caught yourself being biased? So please allow me to share you my experience with this, because somehow I am guilty at being biased. When I was at your age in high school, I thought I would be focusing only in English since it's my favorite subject. It's just right now that I realized and regret that best prioritize the other subjects because at some point in our life, these things will come up at the time when we least expect them. Why is it important? Bias and prejudice are barriers to effective relationships with others. And it is very important, especially at this trying time. Healthcare providers must be alert to these barriers and make every effort to avoid them. Being biased or prejudiced may be a hindrance to communication. And so, if you are a frontliner, you have to be very sensitive because when you prejudge someone during a clinical operation, that someone will get no confidence in telling the truth. There are ways to avoid bias or prejudice. Know and be consciously aware of your own personal and professional values and beliefs. You also have to obtain as much information as possible about different ethnic or cultural groups. Next is to be sensitive. Be sensitive to behaviors and practices different from your own. And you have to remember that you are not being pressured to adopt other beliefs, but that you must respect them. You also have to develop friendships with a wide variety of people from different ethnic groups or cultural groups. You also have to ask questions and encourage questions from others to share ideas and beliefs. Evaluate all information before you form an opinion and be open to differences. We have to accept that we are different individually. No one is exactly the same as the other. Even twins are different from each other. Now, let us see if you really understood what we have discussed for today. Test 1. You have to identify if the situation is bias or prejudice. So you can pause the video at the moment while you are thinking of the answers before proceeding to the next slide. Did you get all correct answers? Wow, that was excellent. Did you get a few mistakes? It's alright, you did good. You can always do better the next time. Or did you get a lot of mistakes? It's okay. You can always replay this video if ever you missed an information or you wanted to clear out some things. Now, this is for your performance task, and it is going to be a prayer of your heart. Kindly compose a prayer of your heart for those who experience bias and prejudice. The prayer should be at least 50 words. And on the next slide, you will see the rubrics or the criteria on how you are going to be scored. Now, let's wrap it up and reflect on the things we have learned from this lesson. evaluation, we have two tests. You can always pause the video while you are thinking of the answers before proceeding to the next slide in checking your answers. Thank you so much for staying with me all throughout this lesson. I hope you grabbed as much as knowledge as you need to answer your modules. Good luck!